Hello everyone, welcome back to this another important tutorial. So today we're going to be talking about function in JavaScript, functional programming. Okay, if you notice, I just created a folder. There is no file inside. So just like I used to explain, if you want to have the same experience with me, you have to install Node.js from the official documentation, as well as this same text editor VS Code. Okay, now I want to create a file calling that app.js, and then here we're going to talk about function. Yeah, function is one of the important building blocks of every programming language, and is a block of code that does a particular task. And then how does it work? You have to first define the function. We call that function definition or function declaration. Then you call the function, which is also called function invocation. Okay, so now let's see how this works. Okay, yeah, just like I said, a function is a block of code that does a particular task. Okay, so and then I also mentioned you define a function, then you call a function. Then there's also something that is very important about function types. We have what we call function declaration and then function expression in JavaScript. And then normally in function, the way we define a function, you can just say something like this: const, let's say greet. Okay, let me not make this as a comment. Let me declare that here. I want to declare a function that greets someone, and I want to call the function name greet, and then I mention the function keyword. Open the braces, the curly braces. Then of course I'm using console.log. I say good day. Okay, now this is a function I've defined. We call this function definition. Yeah, function definition. And then if I run the terminal, nothing is going to happen. Let me run the terminal. Say node app. It's not returning anything. Why? Because the function has not been called. Remember, I told you, first of all, we define a function, or you declare a function. Then secondly, you call the function. So how do we call the function? You use the name, which is this greet, to call the function with parentheses in front. So sorry, greet. Okay, sorry. Let me, as a comment, this should be call the function. Okay, so I mentioned greet. I put this in front. So by the time I run this, you see good day, which is what the function is returning. Yeah, and then this type of function is what we call function expression in JavaScript. Function expression is a bit tricky. Why? Because if you remember, I defined the function first. There is function definition first before the function call. Because if I happen to call this function here, it's going to throw an error. Why? Because I have to, you see, it's breaking the code. It's saying cannot access grid before initialization. So it requires that I define the function first before I call the function. But then let's do another function definition. And then this time around, I want to use function declaration. So what I'm going to do is, let me just say hola function. Function hola. Hola. And then here I say console.log, and then I say I greet you. this is just a basic form of function, so it's not really doing much. Yeah, so in this case I can also call the function hola here, and sorry, let me clear this terminal. Yeah, you say I greet you, which is from hola. Then notice this hola. Now I want to call the hola first. You remember what happened when I called this before definition? So I want to call hola. Let me even go up, 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 up. Call hola, and it's still running. So it's running. It's not throwing that same error we got when we tried to call this before initialization. So this is function declaration. So in JavaScript, function declaration can afford you the latitude or the opportunity to call a function before the definition of that function. So I want to establish these two things. But then this is just a basic form of function in programming, because function could be as complex as your logic can be. For example, in Node.js, you use a function to register a user in the database, you use a function for login, you use a function for to create a product, you use a function for so many other things. So that's the importance of function. That's how complex function can be. It could be as large as or as technical as your logic can be. Okay, well, there are some certain things you really need to understand for you to be flexible or effective in using a function. And of course, function definition, you define a function once and you can call it as many times as possible. So I can still call hola here and we are good. There is no issue. Yeah, so you can call it as many times as possible. So if the block of code is what you need more than once in your program, nothing stops you. That's what a function does. It helps us to maintain the dry principle. The dry principle. That's dry, which says don't repeat yourself. So don't repeat yourself. Yeah, so don't repeat yourself. So that's why we have to define it, because if assuming we are not defining the function and calling it, you should agree with me that for me to have I greet you, it means I have to, as I've defined here, I have to define again and define again and define again. So that's what function does. Okay, then we've talked about the function definition, two different ways we define function, and also how we can call the function using the name of the function. But then you notice something. In all the functions I've defined, there is nothing inside this bracket. And then of course you would have seen functions that has something inside. Yeah, so when we declare a function and we put something inside here, we call that parameter. And then because you are putting something inside, definitely at the point of calling the function, you should also put something, a value that should be assigned to those variables. So the value you are putting is called argument, while the variable name is the parameters. So let's see how this works. So we are talking about, I don't want to use caps, so parameters and argument. Okay, now let's take another step further. Now probably a function that is receiving name to greet the person who has the name. So we can say something like const hello. Let's call the name of the function hello, then we say function, and then we say name, and then yeah, let me also explain the concept of this parameter, because this name here is a parameter. So let me just say name is a parameter. So this name I in my first video on operators, variables, and all, and those basic concepts, I made mention about variable names and how to choose variable names. Now, if I put a here, it will still do the same job. If I put first name, last name, however, it does the same job. So just look at this as the way you choose variable names, exactly the way you choose variable names. Okay, now I'm going to be saying console.log, and then I want to say good day. Sorry, permit me to use backticks. I like using that. So I say good day, put a comma, I say name. Yeah, so whoever has this name, that is the person I am greeting, and I'm also greeting you that is watching the video. Good day, whatever is the time, good evening or good night. Okay, yeah, so I want to call this function. I say hello, and because when at the definition level there is something here within the bracket, so it means I should put something here at the call. So here is the variable. When you declare a variable, there should be a value for the variable, just like a situation where you say something like const name to be equal to, you have to mention probably John Doe. You get, John Doe is the value, while this name is the variable. So this is exactly what's happening here. This is exactly what the experience we are seeing here now. That's the situation we are seeing. See the name, which is a variable name, so there should be a value that should be assigned to it. So I can still use the same John Doe. So if I use John Doe, what it means is going to say good day to mention John Doe. Simple. So we're going to have this say good day John Doe. So I can call this function as many times as possible. I want to change John Doe and say Peter Doe. Say good day Peter Doe. Simple. So that's what we call parameters and arguments. So here name is a parameter. Here John Doe is an argument, and here too Peter Doe is an argument. Yeah, so Peter Doe is an argument. So that's that about the two concepts. So please do not forget. And then also function expression and function declaration. In function expression, you must definitely define the function first before you call it. Then in function declaration, which is this kind of thing, you can call it before you define it. Just like here, we are calling hola here. See where we define hola, we are calling it here. You can put call. Yeah, we're calling it here. Then we've already called here too. So that's why you can see I greet you and I greet you at the terminal. So that's that for those. Please take note of these. It's really important, and you keep seeing them over and over and over. That's why most times it looks as if I'm overflogging some concept, because I know by the time that sticks there in the brain, and it will give you a huge breakthrough in your journey of programming in general, not just in JavaScript. So the next thing I want to also talk about is the return statement. Okay, so now by the time over time here we've been using console.log inside the function, because our primary aim or concern is just to see the function output on the terminal. But there are situations where you are building projects or writing huge applications, and you declare functions within the application, and the console is not the one calling. You are not sending the output to the console. Probably a different program is the one calling your function. So in that case, you are returning is a way of saying it's just like the function saying I am done, take what you are requesting for, because a program has to request information from the function. So it's kind of saying take what you are looking for. I am done, so that the interpreter will continue with other program in the other code in the program. Okay, so now look at how this works. Let's say I have a function that is squaring every number, and then we're using expression. I'm much accustomed to this expression. Then of course, for us to square numbers, we have to dynamic numbers, we have to be putting a parameter here, and I believe at this point we should know what parameter is. Then I want to return the square of the parameter we are putting, and of course from our operators, you know, double asterisk means power raised to the power 2, or you can call this square. That works. But then, because here we are returning it now, we can't, if I say square and I put something like 4, okay, 2 square is 4. I can't see that here because we've not sent to the console, so it's not going to return 4. So it means I have to send this to the console before I should be able to see that. So sorry, this is console.log, and then put this inside, so it's going to give us 4. Yeah, so if we put something like 5 here, it's gonna give us 25. Yeah, so the return keyword is what returns, what you use to send out whatsoever the function is returning, because any program that is calling a function is requesting for information from the function. So the return is where you are sending out that information. And that brings me to another concept and another question. What you might be wondering, what if I do not want to return only a single value, probably more than one value? You can return, a function can return an array, a function can return an object, a function can also return a function in the case of closures and higher other functions. So a function can return any type of data. It could be boolean or whatsoever. So you feel free to return whatsoever the function is returning, you know. So just like now we have a function that is squaring numbers, we can have a function that solves probably that gets an area, let's say for example, area of a triangle, something like this. You can say const angle. Let me use this as the variable name, and then I'll say function. And then, you know, in a triangle, you ask yourself what are the parameters you have inside the formula. I have base times height, so we have a base and a height. So it means in the parameter level we're going to be having base and height. So here we can just return that because it's not complex. So and half is 0.5, so we're going to be saying 0.5 half times base, which is b, and times height, which is h. So with this, if you extract the base and the height of any triangle and put here, it will definitely give you that. So we can have console.log of angle, let's say a triangle that has a base of let's say 4 and a height of let's say 6. So in this case we're going to have something like 12. Yeah, so have base times height. Okay, so that's that. You could use that for anything, like, no matter, it could be as complex as whatever, you know. Yeah, so that's what function is all about in programming, in JavaScript, and in programming in general. Then there is a type of function I want to talk about, the arrow function. I want this video to be as short as possible. I'll give some few examples, you know. So we have what we call arrow functions. But before I talk about arrow functions, I want to just level the ground a bit with some few examples. A function can have a loop inside. Yeah, I know we've not really talked about loop, but permit me to just give you an overview of on how that works. A function can also have a conditional statement inside the function body. Yes, it works that way, whereby when you get the parameters, you check some certain condition based on the parameters, and that will that will determine what you are returning, what the function is returning, you know. Okay, so now let's see an example. A function running a loop. So I can say const let's say pal. I want to talk about something like palindrome, whereby you have whereby a word is pronounced. When you pronounce a certain word from the back, it gives you the same meaning. Something like Eve, something like civic, something like race car. Yeah, so these are palindromes. So, and we have to have a parameter, let's say n. Okay, so now what we are going to be doing again is, you know, when this comes as an array of string or characters, it requires to be looped. Yeah, I will try as much as possible to explain this. I know that I've not uploaded a video on loop, but it's one of the subsequent videos you are going to be getting. Yeah, I think it's one of the videos you'll see as soon as possible. I'll make sure I do that, so that you will really understand the concept, the ideology of a loop. Okay, so now we are going to use a for loop now. In the initialization, I'll select I to be equal to 0 with a semicolon, because the n is what is going to be holding the array itself. So we are testing if I is still less than the length of the n. So n dot length okay, so we have I plus plus, and then yeah, we have this. So the n dot length is getting the length of whatsoever character you are putting. Let's say this is 1 2 3, so it's going to be putting 3 here. Then I want to have a container variable. I'll select cont to be equal to empty string. So at the point of this loop, I'll collect whatsoever this is looping out, and I'll put it inside the cont. So I'll say not cont, and then is n with the what's it called, index variable. So at this point now, cont is holding the loop of this. Of course, I want to have the loop from the back, so I have to change this to n dot length -1. Okay, yeah, n dot length -1. So in the condition 2, I have to change that to making sure that n is greater or equal to 0. Then instead of incrementing, I have to decrement. Yeah, so this makes it to loop from the back. Then if it loops from the back and arranges the value, the output inside this cont, it means you are going to be having the reverse of whatsoever that is coming there. Okay, now let's check this out before we continue, so that you understand much better. We're going to be returning the cont. Yeah, that's who has this value. So console.log of pal. We're not done with that function, we're coming. So I want to have civic civic. So it's still showing civic because civic is a palindrome. Now let me change to let's say function. If I run that, this is showing us, you see, is arranged from the back. Because civic is a palindrome, you could read it plainly. If you read from here, it's civic. If you read the reverse direction, is still civic. Just like the race car is also a palindrome. So let me put race car here. It will still show you race car. You read it normally as race car, you know, because it's a palindrome. So now we've achieved rearranging this, the whatsoever we are putting inside the function. We've rearranged that coming from the back. Then let's run a conditional statement. I want to comment this. Let's run a conditional statement. We can say if n, you know, n holds what we are using. Like here n is civic, here n is function, here is n is race car. So if n is equal to, and also of equal data type as count, so that's count. So if they are the same, definitely we say return. Then I want to mention what the user is putting. So of course it's n, so this is a palindrome. Then when this is not the case, I have an else. I say this is not a palindrome. So let me comment this and this, and run civic. So it's going to say civic is a palindrome. Let me open up function, run, say function is not a palindrome. Then race car is a palindrome. So this is what we can do here. Then finally, let's talk about arrow function. There are so many things we can do in function. Just like I said, is as wide as your logic can be. Okay, so we have arrow functions. So arrow functions is a short form of function. Yes. And then there are some other things we should also know about arrow function. We don't use arrow function as a method in an object. Yeah, it's not supposed to be a method in an object. So these are one of the things you should look out for in arrow function. But arrow function plays a very vital role. It can seamlessly work as an anonymous function, whereby you are declaring a function and you are calling it on the fly, in the sense that it does not require that you initialize a function. So as you are initializing, you are calling. Mostly when we are using function in an event, either event listener, event handler, yeah, as an event handler, yeah. So it does a good job. So it's also one of the videos I'm going to do. I will do justice to that. We'll look at it together and see how that works. So but arrow function is very important. It's one of the ES6 ECMAScript 16 and above, 15 and above topics that came. And for you to really understand React and Node.js, Vue.js, and some of these frameworks, you really need to have a proper hang on arrow function. But then I tell you, arrow function is not difficult. It is simple. Yes, very simple and easy to understand. Yeah. Now let's say we have a function const and cube. Let's say this function cubes every number we are putting inside, and then I can call the parameter. I believe now we know what parameter is. So return and cube. This is old method. Let me say old way, because method is something else in JavaScript. Then I say arrow function way. Okay, now in arrow function we can just say something like let me just use cube 2, yeah, something like this, just to differ from that. And then we're going to be having a parameter, so we can put this, and then we say n and then cube. So this is exactly the same thing with what we have here. Yes, and of course, because we have one parameter, I can decide not to put this, to get rid of this, and it will still work. It is very compulsory to put a parenthesis here to cover the parameter with parenthesis when you have more than one. If you have only one parameter, you can decide to leave out the parenthesis. So here I can say console.log of cube, then if I put 3, should be 27. Yeah, 27. If I put 2, if I put 5 should be 125 or something. Yeah, so just about everything we've done in the past with the old functions, we can do them here. You can say cons grade let's say grade 2 or 3, yeah. And we are using arrow function. So let me say I'm using a parameter name. We want to greet him or her. Sorry, I don't want to introduce this now. Well, we'll do that much later. So say hello, hello name, yeah. So if I say console the log of 3, and then I mention, let's say Joel Doe. Let it not be like I'm only using male names, so sorry, let me put a female name, Mary Doe. So yeah, hello Mary Doe. Then I want to show you something very important. Look at these two functions, the old way and this cube 2. Now we have const, we have cube, we have cube 2, and then we have function, but there is no function here. So that's what is missing. There is no function, and then we have this and we have this. Then instead of putting this curly brace immediately, you put your arrow. So the return statement that you are bringing down, you put it in front. It works. But then let's see a situation whereby you have more than one value, like more than one expression within the function, and eventually you are going to return more than one thing. Okay, let's take something. Let's look at something much complex. Let's solve an equation, yeah, using JavaScript function. Let's say something like quadratic, yeah, equation quadratic. Yeah, I want us to use arrow function now, so we can say something like const eqn, and then, you know, quadratic equation, you have ax squared plus bs minus c to be equal to 0. So we have a, b, and c as parameters inside. So here I'm going to have a, I have b, I have c, and then I have this. We're using formula method. So for those who really understand that, yeah, if you're looking at the formula, I think that will really guide you more, because the formula is something like this. You have minus b, we have plus, because it's going to have two answers. So we'll solve for the plus and solve for the minus. So we have the square root of b squared minus 4ac, then all over, let me use parentheses to declare the all over 2a, yeah, something like this. That's the formula. So everything within the square root, let me give it a variable name. Let me say something like let root to be equal to, and you know, the square root, I don't want to use a method, the square root method. I want us to break everything down. Square root simply means raised to power 0.5. So we're going to be having b squared, we're having minus 4 4 AC means 4 times A, then times C. Yeah, for AC, and then you say all over raised to power, no, not all over, everything raised to power 0.5, which is half, so 0.5. so this gives us that root. Then so we can just say something like let x1, we are going to be having two answers, so let x1 be minus b, then plus, that's for the positive, ROUT, which is taking care of the square root part of this. Then everything we have here should be all over 2 times A. Yeah, so this gives us the plus. So we'll do the next one for the minus, so we can select x2 to be equal to minus b plus, okay, minus this time around ROUT variable that we've declared already, then all over 2 times A. And yeah, so this is arrow function. You can do that with the old way. Yeah, it also works. So here, because quadratic equation returns two values, so permit me to use backticks and say x1 and 1 this way, and then x2. So yeah, I think that works, huh? Yeah, this works. So let's say we have an equation where we say that maybe something like x minus 2, and okay, and then x minus 3. So if we have something like this, we're going to be having x squared, and then x squared, then minus 3x minus 2x, which is minus 5x, then plus 6. So 1 minus 5 and 6. So these are going to be the parameters: 1 minus 5 and then 6. So if we have that, we are going to be getting 2 or 3 as our x1 and 2. So let's say console.log, we're going to be having eqn, eqn, that's our equation, the variable name. Then we have 1, we have minus 5, we have 6. So yeah, 2 and 3 and 2. So what this means is, if you extract the coefficient of any quadratic equation and put in this formula, you will definitely get the answer. So thank you guys. It's not really easy to put your your energy, your time and everything to watch this. I really commend your effort, but please do something, try out something, code something out, build and break. That's what makes us programmers. Thank you once again.